There's a lot going on with the Sixers. They're home, got Ben Simmons, got this Jimmy Butler stuff. Let's bring in Kevin Kinkead from CrossingBroad.com, who covers the Sixers, and he's with us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Which of these topics interest you the most?
I think I'm interested in the coronavirus, the locker room, and whether the institution of sports journalism will survive.
I know a lot of people boo-hooing the media for not getting to go in the locker room, which I guess the other day I saw a picture of you guys kind of, having to stand like a table's distance away from the Sixers during their media availability.
Yeah. So we were down at the center in Camden, the practice facility in Camden yesterday, and they basically we usually do post-practice availability on the court, and they just kind of bring us over to the side, and we do like a typical scrum. We're all huddled up and right on top of each other and trying to reach over top of each other to get our recorders over there. But what they did was they actually brought us back out to the reception area, and there's it's like a desk, like a regular front desk there. So they put the players with the backdrop on one side of the desk, and then they put a bottle of Purell on the desk, and then they put the media on the other side. So we were, like 6 to 8 feet away from Al Horford and Brett Brown and those guys. And, it makes sense. They're just trying to take precautions. But I kept sitting there at the same time thinking, well, I'm standing like 1 foot away from other media members. So is it okay for us to be on top of each other, but the players are protected? So I think it's just kind of funny to me to think that, if you're going to say that media members can't be that close to the players out of an abundance of precaution, then should the players be that close to other players? Should the fans be sitting, 10 inches away from other fans? It just seems like if you're going to apply the logic that you use to keep the media out of the locker room, you would extend that to everybody else.
Right, not to mention you're playing a game. You're all sharing the same ball.
Yeah.
Like that ball's flipping around to 20 different people. I mean, hey, look, it is kind of crazy. Dan Gelston just tweeted out about 20 minutes ago. I don't see any reference to what he's talking about, but it says 76ers team official statement on fans with tickets for tonight's game. Quote, "We will manage on a case-by-case basis and work closely with our fans towards finding another game for them to attend in the future. They will continue to monitor the coronavirus situation." So is this essentially saying, if you don't want to come, call us and we'll see if we can get you a ticket to another game?
Seems like that's the case. And, I think maybe like 20 minutes before that, Golden State said that they're not going to play.
Yes.
God, what came down on their – are they not? They're playing in an empty stadium? Or not
Tomorrow night against the Nets, they will play in front of an empty place.
Okay. And I have an anonymous source who's in my Twitter DMs right now telling me that he thinks the same thing is going to happen in Philadelphia, not tonight, but eventually, which seems like, whether he's right or wrong. I mean, if we can all use an educated guess here, I think that's probably where we're headed. Ironically, the Philadelphia Union don't play in Philadelphia County, so that game is still on for Saturday. But, it's just interesting to me. I don't, from the media perspective, it's like, I think some people were concerned because they say, okay, you give them an inch, they're going to take whatever from us, and if we're kept out of the locker room this time, we're going to be kicked out of the locker room forever. But, you guys have been up there. You know how we do the press conferences, post game where we're in the setting where they're sitting at the table and we're all in chairs and looking at them from afar. You could do a mixed zone. We have guys in the hallway who are coming down the hallway before they leave the locker room, and you have a barricade in the middle, and we're kind of separated with them that way. I just have a feeling that this is all inevitable, and we're gonna be like, having empty stadiums and stuff like that. I think that's probably just where this whole thing is headed.
How do you think we were talking about, obviously, once the Warriors news came down earlier, Kevin, it seems like it's going city by city, and then the organization has to make the decision. But at what point, if any point, does the NBA step in as a league? Like, when does Adam Silver come out and say, all right, you know what? These are the areas that are having more issues than others. We're shutting these areas down, or we're shutting the whole league down. Like, when do the leagues step in, not just the city or team?
Yeah, well, that's the problem, isn't it? Because then you have all these individual actors who are saying, like, we're going to do this with our city, or we're going to do this with our state, and we've made this recommendation, and we're going to make that recommendation. Like, that stuff doesn't help. You could make the recommendation that only 5,000 people be at these events, but 20,000 people showed up to watch the Flyers last night anyway. Do you think the Flyers fans are going to take a recommendation not to go down and watch them try to win 10 games in a row? Like, that's never going to happen. So people have to, like, say, Adam Silver and the NBA, if they're really serious about this, they just have to come down and issue an ultimatum from the top that says, look, we're not going to have 30 different teams, 32, whatever different teams, all issuing different guidelines on what to do here. We're going to control it from the top. Everybody's going to do this. We're going to block our schedule out this way, because then it just gets into a mess of like, this team's playing in an empty stadium, this team's not. This team's pushing the game back 1 week, this team's not. Like, the cities don't need to be doing this individual stuff. The teams don't need to be doing this individual stuff. Just take it from the top and say, we're going to do this, and that's the solution. And that way you don't have people, acting on their own below you.
I heard Eitan talking about this earlier on the midday show, and if Ben Simmons shoots a three, but no one's there to watch, did he really shoot it?
Well, he may actually be interested in shooting more of them, because isn't that where he took most of them in the summer, in empty gyms? There were only other players there.
That's right. He'll put it on IG, although not until April 1st. Best case scenario, anyway.
That's right. But actually, it's interesting, and I asked a couple of people about this yesterday. I asked Josh Richardson and Shake Milton. I said to them, do you, if it got theoretically to the point where you were playing in front of an empty arena, do you think that would be a competitive advantage or disadvantage to you? I mean, because keep in mind, they've only lost 2 games at home,
right?
And they've talked frequently about how the crowd sort of kicks them in the butt, and sometimes the booing, helps them play with a certain amount of urgency and a certain amount of energy. And if you take that out of the building, it's just a glorified pickup game out there. I mean, are they playing with the same compete level that they normally would? And then on the other side of that, this is a team that can't win on the road. So if you remove all the fans from a road game, does it make them more competitive on the road? It's something interesting to think about.
No doubt. And obviously, the Sixers play tonight at home, as Kevin mentioned. The Flyers play Saturday. What's it, a doubleheader, too? So you're going to have 40,000 people probably going in and out of that place on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, all the wet wipes in the world would not be enough to kind of disinfect the Wells Fargo Center after a changeover from that. But, it does give them, at least they do have a buffer now, they're going to have 48 hours where something will probably happen. Like, I honestly, if you just asked me to take an educated guess, I would be stunned if those games are played with fans on Saturday.
Wow.
I think they'll play at Subaru Park because Delaware County has different recommendations, and that's a smaller outdoor venue. I don't know how much that matters, but I would be stunned if the Flyers and the Sixers games took place at on Saturday, at least with fans there. And then you think about it, like, you got 2 teams from 2 different leagues playing in the same building. So what is the jurisdiction on that? If the NHL says we don't want you playing, but the NBA says we're fine. That doesn't make sense either. And, when they came out and they issued the locker room rule a couple of days ago, that was a rare joint press conference with the NBA, Major League Baseball, the NHL, and MLS as well. So, if they're going to work together on that, it would make sense that all the leagues would also be on the same page.
Yeah, and I feel that everybody was kind of waiting for the NBA to kind of be the one that makes the move here, and then everyone else will follow them. Like, the NBA is kind of like we talked with McMullen yesterday during our Football at 4 segment, the NFL is lucky they're not in play right now. Because can you imagine them having to cancel Sunday afternoon games with 70,000 people there? They're just happy that they're out of this thing right now. So the NBA is the next big entity. But I don't know if you saw this, Kev. Seattle's already trying to relocate games for the Mariners.
Yeah, and then that's another thing. Like, how are you going to say that, this team plays in a neutral site and this team plays at their home arena in front of no fans, and then, like, whoever ends up winning the championship are putting every single asterisk in the book on whether it was worthy or not, because you're playing unbalanced schedules, you're playing in different venues, you're playing different teams, you're not playing the same amount of home games and away games as everybody else. I mean, it's just a mess. It's like even more complicated than like a lockout or a strike shortened season or something like that. And I can't help but feel bad for. Obviously, we want to take as much precaution as possible and try to just get out in front of this thing and not do anything stupid. But, imagine you're like they canceled the CBI and they canceled the Ivy League tournament, and Harvard beat Yale twice this year.
Yeah.
And they were about to host the Ivy League tournament on their home floor. And they had a chance to beat Yale for a third time and earn a berth to March Madness, but they said we're canceling it. Yale's going to the tournament as our regular season winner and representative. So imagine you're a senior playing at Harvard, and all of a sudden, like, your basketball career is over.
That's such a lazy thing for them to do, I think. Like, I respect the decision, and they were one of the first to really say, you know what, shut it down. But come on. I mean, you have all those teams in that league playing 365.
Yeah, but this is what we talked about yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Is the sports world, Kevin, is always reactionary. They're never the jumping out in front.
Never
and
proactive.
The Ivy League was is the proactive one, and they're getting hammered for it because sports are always the games must go on. Like, it's in every level though. Like I talked about it. You play a little league game and it rains. We'll get the field ready. Don't worry about it. Like, don't cancel the game. You know, nobody ever wants to cancel a game. And the Ivy League said, "The heck with these games. It's more important that that these guys are healthy. Whether it's a 5% chance or a 99% chance, we're just not playing." And that's just not the way.
No, and I agree. And like, here's the other $1 million question. Like, if the Ivy League is going to go out and say we can't have people playing tournament on Harvard's campus because it's too dangerous, then shouldn't they turn around? Then why is it okay to send Yale to the NCAA tournament as their representative if they're going to face the same issues with people in close proximity? You're either all in or you're not.
Well, the XFL just put out a statement, by the way, that the game in Seattle this weekend will be played with no fans. So the XFL, which that's how they're making money, they need fans in that place. Yeah. This could be a death knell for them.
If this derailed the XFL's return to prominence, like the stupid coronavirus, it's just funny to watch it all unfold as we're on the radio right now. But that's how it happens.
Yeah.
It's a cascade. One person does something, everybody else says, "Oh God, I guess we have to also, or else it's going to look stupid." But at the end of the day, look, it's funny because I worked at Eyewitness News for 7 years. We would scare the crap out of people with snow coverage. Stay off the roads, and this is closed and that's closed, and we would laugh at it and we would roll our eyes at it. But at the end of the day, guess what? I mean, if nobody was out on the road, they weren't skidding off the road and running into people and hurting themselves and doing things like that. So
crazy stuff.
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it makes sense,
A couple quick thoughts. First, the news on Ben Simmons. Reevaluated 3 weeks. That's just kicking the can down the road, it sounds like to me, right?
Yeah, I mean, he'll miss 10 more games remaining in March, and then they play at home on the 3rd. They play at home on the 5th. And then they play at home on the 7th of April, and then they go on that 3-game road trip, San Antonio, New Orleans, and Memphis. So the best case scenario, I mean, I can't remember the last time that they evaluated a guy that when we came out of that evaluation right away. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's even takes you further beyond that. Maybe he'll get the best case scenario, probably 2 or 3 games before the playoffs start.
Yeah. What is Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, do you believe he will play tonight?
I don't think so because
really,
yesterday they made it seem they said that he was mostly doing cardio kind of stuff, and that they weren't doing a lot of banging. So I would think that if you gave me the choice of Josh Richardson or Joel Embiid, I feel like Richardson seemed like he was closer yesterday. Mm-hmm. He came out and talked to us after practice. Embiid did not. So I don't know if that was just a rotational kind of thing or if you can read into that at all, but. Either way, they should be good enough to beat Christian Wood and the Pistons, who have lost 11-12.
I know you had the task of transcribing much of the Jimmy Butler conversation, but what in that conversation was the biggest takeaway from you? Because a lot of people feel like he really laid into Brett Brown and the organization. I don't know that I've read it the same way, but I'd like to hear from other people to see what their take was. I felt like it was getting a little blown out of proportion.
My biggest takeaway was that J.J. Redick was sitting there the entire time and didn't really seem to dispute much of what he was saying. When you think about that, because if it's just Jimmy Butler telling his side of the story in a vacuum, Brett Brown telling his side of the story in a vacuum versus having J.J. Redick sitting there right next to Butler at the same time, then that lends some credence to me. It makes it seem like there's more truth to what Jimmy's saying. And look, I think with every situation, two things, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. We know that Brett has always kind of been a hands-off kind of guy, tries to manage players, and that's what all NBA coaches really are. How many disciplinarians exist in the NBA as it is? How many coaches would bench Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid or, say you got to shoot this 3-pointer or else. So yes, I think it's not really surprising to me, the stuff about the film session and them being passive. But Jimmy Butler is the same guy who played on 4 different teams in 3 years. So I mean, where I think it's his personality. I think is a part of that as well.
And I think he gets a bad rap sometimes, Jimmy Butler, that is, because of his perception from the public and the reputation and the stories that we've heard over the past few years. But Mike and I talked about this over the past 2 days regarding Brett Brown and possibly needing a new voice. And I said this, listen, Brett could be a good coach, but it just seems like Ben and Joe, and they're your star players. They're your leaders, whether they literally are or not. That's who the team is looking to. And if they don't ever step to be a disrespectful way, it could be pull coach aside and be like, yo, listen, I'm seeing this. We need to stop running this. Let's run that. And you hear Jimmy, talk today on that podcast, and I think it just validates that. Like, Ben and Joe are not at the point in their career where they can be like, no, we got to stop doing this, coach. We got to do X instead of Y.
Yeah. Well, I think you guys probably remember the point I made when I was talking to you guys like 2 or 3 weeks ago, where I said, I think you guys were going down the list of 30 things that were wrong with the Sixers that I wrote. I think you guys probably agreed with the fact that the locker room ecosystem is strange because the guys who have been there the longest are the youngest. And the guys who have been there the least amount of time are the oldest. So it's just kind of like a strange, like inversion there. But yeah, I mean, you could be the best coach in the world, and sometimes things run their course. Mac Brown won a national title with Texas, and he coached them for like 13 years, 14 years. And then at the end of it, it was just like, okay, this is over. That thing ran its course, and people weren't really listening to him anymore. Maybe that's not the greatest example because Brett hasn't won anything, but still, I think good coaches, it doesn't matter whether you're a good coach or a bad coach. I just think there's a shelf life on these things that eventually the message is not being heard, or you just need a different person to come in and tell you the same thing,
He's at Kevin_Kinkead from Crossing Broad. Are you going to be at the building tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to be there. I'm going to wash my hands. I'm going to sanitize. I'm going to practice good social distancing. We're going to try to take all the
try something new. Washing your hands.
Yeah.
20 to 30 seconds, please. 20 to 30 seconds.
We'll Kevin, see what happens, and we'll see if we can still get some decent quotes,
Yeah, man. Kevin Kinkead, Crossing Broad. Thanks, pal.
All right, anytime, guys.
Yeah, he, like all guests, and he's a fine mountaineer. He, like all guests, appeared to be the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.